Good evening. This work session of the ISD 279 School Board is being held in the forum room of the Educational Service Center on Tuesday, May 6, 2025. The work session is being audio recorded. The recording will be made available on the district website within 2 business days after the work session is ended. With regard to the audio recording, our communication staff has asked that we share a friendly reminder that side conversations during the work session are picked up by the recorder and can affect sound quality. Also, conversations during transitions between agenda items are on the recording as well. The intent of the school board work session is to allow for school board discussion of topics. Work sessions do not include an opportunity for audience members to address the board. To acknowledge attendance this evening, I'll ask that all present at the table state their name, starting with the person to the left.
Tanya Prince, school board member.
Erica Foster, school board member.
Keith Tate, school board member.
Kelly Parpart, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Schools.
Steve Flisk, Assistant Superintendent for the elementary.
Brian Bass, Assistant Superintendent for Equity and Achievement.
John Morstead, Executive Director of Finance and Operations.
Kay Valella, Executive Director of Community Relations.
Anthony Paternis, Executive Director of Technology.
Yvonne Schwartz-Lind, Executive Director of Human Resources.
Brian Severson Hall, Executive Director of Community Engagement.
Amy Moore, General Counsel.
Sarah Mitchell, school board member. Kelsey Basson, school board member. Kim Heil, superintendent.
And I, Thomas Brooks, school board member, am present. The purpose of the school board work sessions is to build trust and teamwork, to exchange information, and when applicable, to provide direction in order to facilitate efficient and effective decision-making at regular board meetings. Dr. Heil, will you please share your check-in?
Yes, thank you. So thank you, Vice Chair Brooks and Chair Prince and board members. We're excited today to give you an update on attendance boundary changes. And so I'll have Kay introduce who's speaking with you.
Yes. So Superintendent Heil and school board members, thank you for this opportunity to update you. Executive Director or Director of Operations, Finance and Operations, John Morstead will be assisting in sharing more on the next steps here. But our presentation tonight will share the process done to create proposals, summarize community feedback, and review the recommended scenario. We also have some members of our core team here with us tonight. Principals David Branch, Jeff Zastro, and Brian Chance. And I know Ternisha was going to make an appearance sometime tonight as well. So thank you. Just a little bit of history on why we are doing this now. So in the simplest way, it has to do with where our students are going and what schools can hold. This can obviously change from year to year or decade to decade even. The Enrollment and Capacity Management Advisory Committee, or ECMAC, has been monitoring enrollment shifts in conjunction with our school building capacities for the last several years. Their most recent reports have detailed that a significant enrollment imbalance exists, and it's to the point that it should be addressed. Specifically, there is significant growth in the northwest portions of the district, and future housing and redevelopment are expected in these same areas. In addition to this, there are also some district schools that are under capacity. ECMAC's work helped to form 2023's Building a Better Future referendum. During that time, the Oversight Task Force agreed that with ECMAC's suggestions, and additional facility space became a part of the referendum in 2023 as a result. Again, thanks to our community support of Building a Better Future in 2023, a new elementary school and additions to Maple Grove Senior High School were approved to address the space constraints. During the 2023 Building a Better Future referendum, it was additionally noted that attendance boundary changes were needed no matter the outcome of the election. With the additional facility space being added with the community referendum support, attendance boundary changes would be limited to elementary and middle schools only, and thus impacting fewer families as promised. So just to be clear, for those listening in, there are no changes being made to the high school. We understand that community members make lots of decisions based on their household school assignments, so this process is not something that we want to be doing often. In fact, it's been more than 15 years since we've last done changes on this scale, although we've come to a point where it's needed. So this is a quick look at our timeline that we have taken as part of this change process. It started last summer with the establishment of a core team, including it included 3 in community engagement opportunities, and is concluding this month with a review of the final recommendation and board vote. So the review is taking place this evening, and the vote will occur on May 20th. As a reminder, our communication goals were to have clear, comprehensive communication that was timely and easily accessible, understandable, void of misinformation. We also wanted to make sure we were easing anxiety with communication that reflected the district's care and concern for staff, students, and parents and caregivers. Also, we set out to create opportunities for our audiences to share their thoughts and ask questions. And last but certainly not least, we wanted to maintain the students enrolled in our districts. This is a look at the community engagement numbers that we had. This first one highlights the thought exchange, and that is really that first community engagement opportunity that we had, asking our families, our staff, and community members what they'd like us to consider as we go to the drawing board. The next two are those that attended the two sets of community informational meetings we had. So we had 2 in January. You can see that some attended or live streamed and then have seen the recording afterward. Same with our 2 community informational meetings in March. We definitely had a lot of people going to our website and checking out the information. So over 60,000 views to our Boundaries website since we shared about this change process on January 14th originally with the scenarios. We've had 2 hotlines at the district level, the Better Future email, which we had 175 emails to that thus far, and then 19 phone calls. And I know our schools have been getting some questions additionally to this, but that's our kind of our main hotline numbers. This is a look or a word cloud from our first community engagement opportunity that won about considerations. So the core team really kept this at the forefront of their work. The thought exchange question posed to our community was what should be considered as our community works to create new attendance boundaries at the elementary and middle school levels. The topics most frequently mentioned were, and you can kind of see this standing out a little bit in the word cloud, student social networks in neighborhood schools, including middle, high school alignment, minimizing disruption, proximity to school and transportation efficiency, class size, future housing developments, diversity and equity, safety considerations, a lot about roadways specifically, and then open enrollment. So as a result of this first community engagement, some community-built parameters were established as part of that work. These really guided the next steps, and these were all used to create the scenarios. So just wanted to go through them real quickly here. Centering our core values, ensuring scenarios can function in our system, ensuring scenarios have longevity, following established class targets, considering number of students impacted, considering demographics, connecting schools level to level, keeping neighborhoods intact, minimizing non-adjoining areas, maintaining current walk zones, maintaining safety standards, avoiding lengthy travel time on buses, and complying with laws, policies, and agreements. As John will share in a little bit here, these parameters have been adhered to as much as possible in each of the proposed scenarios. Before we jump into the scenario-specific feedback, we wanted to share where the responses came from. So as part of both the January, we'll call it, community engagement opportunity and March community engagement opportunity, we had 2 surveys that went out as part of that, and that's where the majority of our feedback came in through. So feedback survey 1 in the blue is from January and the orange is from the March. So you can see, not surprisingly, the majority of the responses came from parents and caregivers, but we also heard from students. We heard from community members that don't currently have students attending our schools and staff members as well. This is a chart with the greatest participation in order. So this is both surveys combined. So the top areas that we received information from were Maple Grove, followed by Plymouth, and then Brooklyn Park. Maple Grove was fairly representative of the students attending our schools that reside in that city. Plymouth, however, was the outlier with about a third of the total feedback and 4% residential makeup of our district. Brooklyn Park had nearly 13% of the feedback, but makeup of the residents in our district are at about 35% of this. Seeing an underrepresentation from Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center early on, additional research were made to elementary and middle school families in these 2 cities, including tables at conferences, flyers and backpacks, and distributed at pickup and drop-off times. We had some flyer information and in-school e-newsletters. We did see some increases in this, but not quite where we were hoping to get to it. This is a sample, so really the core team just showing the depth to which we really tried to analyze the feedback and where it was coming from. This map was one of the tools, an example of how we really dug into seeing if there were some even areas or neighborhoods that had some consistent concerns or what some of the things were behind that, so we could really zoom in and see some specific information. So all the red houses represent, in this example, the January feedback that was received. Participation by language, these are from both of the surveys combined. So we had about 2,300 community members participate in the surveys, about 1,250 on the first and 1,046 on the second. And we had about 0.2% of those participants utilize a different language. We also had our RSVP form share languages, so we were able to connect ahead of time families that were requesting information in a different language, which was helpful. So I'm going to turn it to John now to talk about the presented scenarios and the community response to them.
Thank you, Kate. The core team talked through several possible scenarios late fall. These were whittled down to 4 that most closely aligned with the community-built parameters. Scenarios 1, 2, 3, and 4. Of these 4, some adhered to certain parameters more strongly than others. This second community engagement opportunity was a great way for the core team and cabinet to see which parameters were most important to our community. All in all, community members favored scenario 2 fairly strongly, while scenario 3 was least liked with a similar strength. Scenarios 1 and 4 were consistently in the middle, but the feedback on scenario 4 was a bit stronger on the lack of longevity. The full report details the community's pros and cons for each of the presented scenarios. Based on the community feedback in January, scenarios 1 and 2 were moved forward with some tweaks. The tweaks include, starting with scenario 1, balancing capacity between buildings to include current in-district transfers and current open enrollment students, shifting Fernbrook Elementary school boundaries further west, adjustments to Elm Creek and Edenbrook schools boundaries to account for future development, reduce the size of Woodland Elementary's boundary to balance capacity for in-district transfer and open enrollment students. For scenario 2, some similarities. Balancing capacity between buildings, including current in-district transfers and open enrolled, adjustments again to Elm Creek and Edenbrook for future development, reduce travel distance to the new elementary by shifting the southern area back to Fernbrook Elementary School, reduce Woodland Elementary School's boundaries to balance capacity for in-district transfer and open enrolled students. The updated scenarios were presented as scenario 1A and 2A. It was noted that these were not exactly the same as previous scenarios 1 and 2. A lot of the January 14th and February 7th community feedback requested phasing in or special considerations be made for certain grades. Even though the School Board Procedure 558 prohibits the district from offering in-district transfer to impacted schools during an attendance boundary transition year, the core team and cabinet agreed to offer special considerations for 5th and 8th grade students in the 2026-27 school year. These students will have the opportunity to maintain enrollment at their current assigned school. If families with 5th and 8th graders decide to stay at their current school, transportation will be the responsibility of the family. The new opportunity was presented during the February 28th and March 21st community feedback opportunities. So now the feedback on 1A and 2A. This shows that most participants rated 1A as a 1 or poor. And this shows that participants rated 2A as a 5 or excellent. So all in all, scenario 2A was by far the most liked, which impacts fewer students and is more efficient for our school system, most notably transportation. The full report details the community's pros and cons for each scenario. Based on the community feedback from February 28th and March 21st, scenario 2A was the final scenario chosen by both the core team and cabinet. 2 edits were discussed that have been incorporated into the final recommended scenario that is being called Amended Scenario 2A Final Recommendation. It's a mouthful. That's okay. The 2 tweaks include the very northwestern part of Edenbrook's boundary will switch to Osseo Middle School, and all of the Sundance neighborhood will remain with Fernbrook Elementary School, where it had been previously split. Approximately 2,000 elementary and middle school students would be impacted by this scenario, which is about 320 fewer than the January's initial proposal and 120 fewer than the March proposal. Some of these strengths in this scenario are its low number of changes, functionality within the system, including efficiencies with building use and transportation services, the elimination of non-adjoining geographic areas, and an improved feeder-like structure as students would move with classmates from elementary to middle school. This scenario would last for the foreseeable future. At the elementary level, neighborhoods would remain mostly intact as more natural barriers, major roadways, parks, creeks, and lakes are utilized. All but one school building would be within their own attendance boundary. Oakview will be adjacent to their boundary. This means students closest to each school would be able to attend and potentially walk. At middle school, non-adjoining geographic areas that currently exist near Northview Middle School would be eliminated. All but one school building would be within their attendance boundary. BMS will also be adjacent to their attendance boundary. Again, meaning that students closest to each school have the potential to be able to walk. Please see the appendix portion of the report for more details on how each school is impacted by amended scenario 2A, the final recommendation. All right, next steps. So once approved, an update will be shared with families, staff, and community members. Some of these audiences will hear further updates as fine-tuning work will need to take place with special education school assignments and transportation routing. One elementary school in particular will likely be moved to an earlier start and end time to better accommodate busing, moving from Tier 4 to Tier 3. A school staffing process will also kick off. School staff are still needed to service our students throughout the district, but they too will need to be balanced. This means some staff will be transferring to other district schools to address student educational needs and support alongside the new attendance boundaries. The district will follow the processes set forth in our labor contracts to do this. Please know our goal is to ensure families and staff are informed and warmly welcomed as they start their new journeys in the fall of 2026. Every effort will be made to help make this possible. Changing attendance boundaries is one of the most challenging projects a district can undertake. The participation numbers show that our community strongly engaged in this process and appreciated the opportunity to share their ideas and thoughts. Several community comments were received about how well this change process was organized and that they genuinely felt heard and valued. In conclusion, the final scenario, amended scenario 2A, final recommendation, has been built in partnership with our community and is thus unanimously supported by both the core team and cabinet. So we'll wrap up with the let's close the loop slide. The information we just shared is a whole lot to ask you to digest. So we want to make sure and double check that there is anything that seems unclear, something you need to feel fully equipped, or anything that would strengthen our shared communication, please let us know.
Board members, any questions?
I just have a question. What would be the earliest start time for an elementary school adjustment that would be made?
So when you're moving from tier 4, so we do there's 4 tiers. Let me just start with that. Start with high school, middle school, the first wave of elementary, the second wave of elementary. So I believe the first wave of elementary is about 9 o'clock right now. 8:50 to 9 o'clock is where their start time.
8:50.
Yeah. And then the other one is 9:30. It's 40 minutes apart between each tier. So what we're proposing is taking one school off tier 4. We need to move 2 schools, but we have a new one coming, so we'll just put that in tier 3. We need to move one off tier 4 forward to balance the number of buses, because as we move kids and shift, we created a little discrepancy, and there were more kids in the late tier at those schools than there are in the earlier ones. So it's just shifting one school. What we've already found in initial conversations with elementary principals is they are lining up saying, "Me, please." So it's going to be more, which one do we choose? Their transportation has some recommendations, and we'll kind of work our way through that. But
That's what
again,
they said on the committee.
yeah,
So is 8:50 still the earliest?
yep.
Yes.
But we're not changing bell times.
Yep. Okay. I'm good.
Can you explain a little bit more what you mean about the special education school assignments?
Yeah, so while we're doing this, we're also trying to balance where special education is offered in the district, because today we have a number of schools that, due to capacity reasons, either did not offer it. An example I'll give you is today Basswood doesn't have any special ed specific classrooms within the school. So we're working with student services, have made some suggestions on where those should go to rebalance, and Mr. Zastro over here would tell you, with the size of his school and the capacity, we had to pull a lot of programs away. We'd like to be able to put those back so we have much more balanced, what I would call full service elementary schools. And so that's what we're talking about, of trying to get special ed available in all sites so we don't have to transport as many kids as many places to do that. The goal is that every site for elementary can offer a 4-star program and a special ed programming on site. So again, we're trying to serve within our neighborhood as many people as possible. That also helps us on the back end reduce transportation and not have to move kids building to building so much.
So we've been looking at these reports since last week, so I think we've dug into them quite a bit. And as far as the question, like feeling fully equipped, I think the package that we have with the detail and which is available to the public, the report part, has got every school site and some explanation about what the change is and why. I think is really, really helpful. So I feel fully equipped personally with kind of all of the communication and interactions and adjustments. And I've appreciated that throughout the process, board direction and input has been taken in, multiple stakeholders, and I think the fact that we haven't had any public comment, I think, on this, like nobody's come in, right, and had expressed concerns, like, we have one? Sorry. But I think it just illustrates like, the degree of engagement that people have had. There's been the right mechanisms in place for people to participate in the process. I think that's been really good. But I was curious if the principals had anything to add or if you want to share with us while you're here.
No, this has been an exhaustive process, and Kay and John have navigated input from more directions than I would care to in my career, and come to, I agree, this kind of detailed information. I've been in OSCA 23 years. I think this is efficient and effective as we've ever been with the whole community process.
I would add too, I agree with Jeff, and I think the changes they made, like they shared about allowing 5th graders to finish their school year and 8th graders, however the team came to that, but it was really through feedback in the process. So I think the team, the whole core planning team, and Kay and John said they were going to listen to input and make recommendations based on what was listened to. And that's just one of probably 3 or 4 examples at least that I can think of. There might be more that were true, right? So anytime I think you follow through on your word, that's going to help, right? So that seems obvious, but that's not easy to do, to Jeff's point, when you're getting a lot of feedback from a lot of different directions, right? But I would say I experienced the same thing. I think the team followed the input they gave. That's why you see 1A, 2A, and whatever you called the final recommended amended report. So that I would just add that to the space. I thought that was pretty impressive when they would come back and say, here's the changes the core planning team made based on the community gatherings.
And definitely not 3A.
I'd say anecdotally too, when you're sitting there talking with families as they were kind of in the sessions, even if it was something that they didn't necessarily like or it meant something different for them, repeatedly I heard families say, well, thank you for listening and engaging in that. So that was really good to hear sitting there, because not everybody got essentially what they had hoped to get out of it, but I think they got heard. So that's what was shared, at least at the tables that I heard.
And a tremendous just amount of work was done to everyone who was in the committee, as well as Kay and John, all of the staff members that came to these sessions, that sat at the tables and led the work. EMO was very impressive. It was very much a district and a community deal.
I think it definitely went a long way towards that concept of transparency and trust, building it with the community, and this whole process really put a a lot of chips in our court for how transparent we've been in this process, and I've told you guys this the whole time. I've been super impressed by how the process has been handled. And as a board member, it makes it really easy to go, yeah, we have full trust in this process, and here's who you talk to, and they're gonna listen. Like the second meeting I went to, somebody came up and told me something. I said, well, here's who you go talk to. And she's like, are they gonna listen? I said, absolutely they're gonna listen. They may not do it. So just even the flexibility, I really appreciated that, because I know this isn't an easy process, and I think it just earns us a lot of trust with the community that you guys were willing to be flexible on items.
Yeah, and I was straight up dreading this whole this whole thing when I heard about it. So, but I've been like really pleasantly surprised with how this feedback has just been like amazing. Like the number of responses we got, the number of forums, and different ways we reached out to folks. It's just been really cool to see. So yeah, appreciate it.
I mean, I would concur. Coming back on the board, I was like, oh God, dear God, like we're running into this, What I really appreciated is that, when we talk about community engagement, it isn't just us telling people something. It's really about a two-way relationship, and I think that this has been a really great example of how we've done that, because I mean, even those first sessions, people were upset about some things, and I think that you were able to take that and kind of take the, bring it back to the team, and you had a great team, very diverse in every way, coming together, and I think just being very responsive while recognizing the complexity of it. I mean, you even talking about the transportation, oh my God, I would not want to job. That's a lot of work to do that, and we have such a large district. The other thing I was kind of going in, kind of just had wonderings about is just where are we getting the feedback, right? And we, and really engaging and talking to people, and I think that intentionality of going back to look at okay, well, who are we hearing from? To me, that's I know it took a lot of extra work on everyone's part, and you all have lives outside of this, and so, but but even to me as a parent, I mean, that means a lot. That just that extra care is really important. So I just kind of want to ask you guys, what are you most proud of this process? I'm curious. You weren't ready for that.
Everybody's looking at me. I think just reflecting back, because I've done this before in a previous role, and I just think that this process, the way we laid it out, just made it so that people could really feel like they were heard throughout it. I think holding space helped with that a lot. I think because you come in with emotion, this is emotionally driven in my viewpoint, right? It's an emotionally driven topic. People are coming in hot. I remember talking to one parent, thinking the color codes meant something, and they were afraid to speak up in the large, they thought it was going to be this open mic sort of a situation. So I'm like, no, it's not about that. We really want to hear what you have to say, and there were so many people that came as a team effort. Our core team, we had admin assistants help us out extra hours to really make those groups small and intimate, so you could have those one-on-one conversations. So I think just by structuring it in that way, giving ample opportunity, we did continual reminders. So I feel really proud of all the team that came together to make it happen, because it takes so many to really come up with a solution that is going to be something that can hold in our district for a long time, because we don't want to be doing this again time and time again. So proud of all that team effort, proud of the team effort just to respond to people and interact with people. It just was amazing, and I just feel, because I have to say, you kind of dreaded a little bit too going into it, I have to say, but just after this experience, I think that it can be done well, and it has to be done in tandem, and really getting to know the community too, so that people can express their concerns and feel that they are getting their thoughts expressed as well. So I don't know if that
She did a good job. To add one thing to that, and I'm going to actually use a term that Kay coined, which is community-built solution. Okay, we came into this with no agenda. We just knew there was a problem, and the problem needed to be solved. And you can look at the current maps we have and pretty much figure out, oh, that seems odd, this seems odd, we probably need to make some adjustments. That's pretty much where we started, and then we said to the community, okay, what's important to you? And step by step, we never in that process did the district say, or did we have a meeting that said, which one do we want? We let it just work itself out. So I think that's what's really cool to me, and what I'm proud of is the fact that we could do that and see that to the end and didn't have to interject. We could just say, nope, we're gonna take your feedback and make some tweaks, and then you tell us if that's any good, and we'll do it again. And we'll just keep doing that until we get to a solution that seems to work. So that's what I'm proud of, but it's Kay's turn.
I just wanted to agree with Kay that, we held space, and we truly held space, and we truly allowed everyone to be valued and respected, and we didn't hijack it. We didn't come and hijack it the way we wanted. And there was so many times when people would come and go, are you truly going to listen to us, or does it matter, and to let our community know that their voice matter, that you're important. Because I live by that. So I'm excited that this is how it's supposed to work, and we're setting examples for other districts of how to do it correctly. I'm a little competitive too.
I do hope you guys present this at MSBA for other sessions for the community-built solution.
Yeah, I don't have much else to add. I echo everything that was said by board members and admin. It's pretty simple, but I appreciated the extra level of detail and with the data in terms of walking us through how we got from the initial scenarios to where we are today, versus just showing us the different scenarios and having us come to our own conclusions. So thank you for all the work on this, and I will have my fingers crossed that everything continues to go smoothly over the next couple of weeks. So, all right, Dr. Heil, back over to you.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to blow your mind again. Okay, here we go. So, once again, thank you, Vice Chair Brooks and Chair Prince and board members. We are ecstatic tonight that we're going to present what marks another step towards our commitment for transparency in our district and accountability in service of what our missions are, our core values. Thank you, gentlemen. And our strategic direction that was adopted back in December 2021. So as a district, we have worked to be intentional about aligning our systems to support our scholar success. So that has been our main focus. And the vision cards are one of these key ways that we track and communicate that progress. So if you may remember, back in January, we shared the why behind our work with our vision cards, and we wanted to reimagine what they should look like. So the update centers about 3 big goals this evening. Is going to center around where we're going to go about eliminating redundancies. So we have a clear picture of what matters and how do we provide high-level, meaningful data that helps you and our broader community to see exactly what we're doing as a district, and how do we become more closely aligned, each measure to the strategic priorities that the board has provided us. So what you'll see this evening will actually reflect strategic direction C and D. So these 2 directions focus on the following: meaningful community engagement and operational innovation and excellence. And all of this works towards that our foundational work of building trust and having sustaining impact. So this evening, Dr. Bass will be reporting with our other superstar team, and I'll let him introduce.
Thank you, Dr. Heil. Good evening, Chair Prince, Vice Chair Brooks, and members of the board. To say I'm excited, I don't even know if excitement is absolutely. We've enjoyed how much time we've had to really sit with process and trying to make this as transparent in terms of what we mean by strategic alignment. So with me this evening is Dr. Kine, our Director of Learning and Achievement, and John Choi Aristad, Tom Watkins wasn't able to be with us this evening, but we've got it. Also presenting on some of the communication and marketing pieces will be Kay, and the recruitment and retention pieces in D. Yvonne Schwartzlin will be joining us for that piece. So team effort all the way around today. So, yeah. Okay, there we go. So our outcomes include the following. First, to learn about and discuss the data measures for the high priority initiatives for strategic direction C and D. And so this is capturing what we talked about in January, the items that we want to keep, but then how do we add to that so that we really tell a thoughtful story out to you and to the community. And then the second one is, this is where some of that excitement and bubbly energy is coming from, is this, we're going to explore the enhanced alignment between strategic priorities, our strategies that we're using in the system, and the measures or the metrics that show our implementation fidelity. So what are the actual things that we're doing at sites and across the system to reflect that there's fidelity in our efforts? And then the last piece then is on our cards would be the impact. What do we see growing and having impact with these efforts across the system so that we are achieving our mission? So that's where we're headed tonight. This is a reminder slide for newer members to the process. Our vision cards serve as critical data points toward the realization of our district's mission. And so as Dr. Heil opened in her comments, we have the strategic roadmap that has our mission, vision, core values, and strategic directions that you all set and approved officially in December 2021. Then we have vision cards that help us monitor our progress. We look at the school and department operational plans as the space where we identify what is this work that we're prioritizing that aligns to these strategic directions that you've set for us. And then our monitoring reports go into greater detail, giving you the high level pieces, but also some of that granular level data that gives you even more of the story. Again, here's our strategic priorities document. As we've said at the beginning of the slide, this is about C and D, and C is to promote inclusive participation of our community and provide timely, relevant, and easily accessible communication. We had a lot of conversation around what we mean by that, and then what metrics really help us understand the extent to which we're doing that, what strategies are helping us with this, and then the same with D, create a system of operational innovation, excellence, accountability, and sustainability. And so trying to do this in a way that we've had time to sit with these strategic directions for 3 years, and what we understand about them today versus what we understood in that first year when we were trying to say, okay, what measures really speak to this that we already capture in the system? And now we're looking at it like, no, what measures, what metrics capture this? And if we've got to create some new data, we're going to create new data in order to make sure that we're showing not only implementation fidelity, but that we're having the growth and impact we want to see. So I don't know if I'm talking too fast or not, but I'm so excited. Anyways, all right, next slide. So this is something that Dr. Heil has shared not only with you all as a board, but also has reinforced throughout our system. And our leaders are using this language about alignment across the system. And so in tonight's presentation, this question of are all of our initiatives aligned to the strategic priorities? Well, tonight is a way that we're trying to capture that. In this process of articulating this, we didn't want to, in this first iteration, have like 15 to 20 different strategies and trying to like map this whole process out. So we just started with a couple, right, to get started this year, and then we'll build on that each year and add more and more transparency to all of the things that we're doing. But in order to help us not have overwhelm, and we only had so much capacity and so much time, we're starting on a smaller scale. So not all the data will be populated yet, but this year, next time, we'll be excited that we'll have a really full and complete card. This is kind of the beginning articulation of this realigned and reimagined version. So is that my last one?
That's your last one.
All right.
So good evening, everyone. I'm going to apologize for double devices. DPAC is actually meeting right now to finalize its report that will be in front of you in a couple of weeks. So that's the other computer. So thank you for your time tonight. We also partnered with a national nonprofit called Education Resource Strategies. And they work with districts across the country to sort of align not just the strategies, outcomes, and measures, but also the financial pieces of that. And so what you see on the screen is sort of what we call the system strategy snapshot that has priority strategies, expected outcomes, and measures. That's where we're going to focus our time tonight. And then as this Vision Card Steering Committee learns more and gets better at aligning things and are clearly articulating and being very mindful about what we're focusing our time, energy, and effort on, we'll start talking about the return on investment piece as well. So when I was a classroom teacher for 18 years, and one of the things that I always talked about was, what's the biggest lesson? What's the biggest point of my lesson for the day? And that is this slide right here. Like if there was a quiz at the end, this would be what my quiz would be on. But it's really the alignment of how everything sort of flows together. So we have our strategic directions. Within each strategic direction, we have a high priority and a focus priority. And that's really what's the most important things we want to achieve within that strategic direction. For each of those priorities, there's one or more expected outcomes. What's the goal? What are we going to be measuring? How are we going to determine if we've met that priority? And then there are several strategies underneath that. We'll highlight a few of them for you tonight in each of the strategic directions, but there could be several of them. We're not going to go into detail on all of them tonight. The next place is that process measure. So along the way, how are we checking for understanding? How are we checking that we're implementing things with fidelity and that whoever is in charge of implementing that knows what's happening? And then lastly are those outcome measures. How do we know if we're having impact and success with each of these? So we'll walk through this for several of our strategic directions and our priorities and focus priorities. And right now, we're going to just jump into strategic direction C. So we're going to take a look at that same graphic. So our highest priority is to standardize the use of communication tools for timely, accessible, and accurate information. And the expected outcome there is that 90+% of our district and site communication is timely and accessible. We have two main strategies that we're going to talk about tonight. The implementation of the district communication plan and the other strategy of the implementation of school communication plans. Our process measure is going to look at the usage and engagement with the communication tools. And then our outcome measure is the family stakeholder survey, and we'll talk about how they tie together. So again, this is just another way to look at it. We've combined C1, which is that highest priority, standardize the use of communication tools, and C2, fostering inclusion for diverse community voices, engagement, and collaboration. And there are three strategies that really work in tandem to accomplish those priorities. As I already mentioned, our district communication plan and our school communication plans, but we also have our family and community engagement rubrics that we use to sort of monitor our progress and look at that from a higher level. So we've identified those, and then we looked at our process measures, our implementation measures. And you'll see that some of them are in this indigo color and some are in black. Anything in indigo is a measure we currently have in our system and that we use. Anything that's in black is something that is in development. So in our process measures, we have our advisory committee participation data. We have how our sites have completed the FACE rubric. We have our usage and engagement with communication tools. On the outcome measures, we also have our staff stakeholder survey and our family stakeholder survey. What's in development is our senior exit survey to look at that pre-K-12 experience and our community survey. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kay to talk about the usage and engagement with communication tools.
So the process measure of usage and engagement with communication tools uses data from talking points, mass notification, and parent view, also known as Synergy, the family communication component of that. With talking points, staff can send a message or announcement to family members in English, and it is automatically translated into the family's home language. When family members reply, that is also automatically translated back into English. For these measures, we are reporting the number of messages and announcements sent by staff to families using talking points during the first trimester of each of the last 3 school years. Messages and announcements both increased to more than 3 times as much from fall 2020 to fall 2021. They returned to baseline levels in fall 2022 and increased again to the progress range in fall 2023. In the fall of 2024, talking points messages reached the vision range and announcements returned to the baseline range in fall of 2024. Our second measure on this card is our mass notification data. This is the system that our district and school teams use for regular communication, including voice, email, and text. Both regular updates and emergency messaging can be sent through this system. Our new S'more e-newsletters, they've been around for about a year and a half now for all of our sites. They're also used, we can share them via this tool as well. Messages can be auto-translated through the system. However, our system chooses to utilize our multilingual specialists when possible so that more accurate messages are shared via this route. Language line information is included on the bottom of all emails. Our fall 2024 mass notification median message delivery rate of 86% remains slightly above our baseline rate of 85%. Our third measure for priority C2 is the percent of parents using ParentView. ParentView allows parents to check attendance, course grades, health records, high school credits, test scores, and other student data. The Information Systems Department began reporting ParentView use data in January of 2023. The average across the months of January through March for students in grades K through 12 were used for this report. The baseline level for this priority was 87%, and it's increased slightly to 88% in 2024 and remained at 88% in 2025. These are some future, I know in your report you had a link to some of these things, but we'll dive a little bit more into these moving forward. So these are process measures, especially our community relations team takes a look at regularly. So the website, like we take a look at this weekly, who's visiting our website, what are they looking at? And it varies from week to week, and we can see what people are interested in and adjust our coverage based on that as well. Social media is pretty similar to that, but seeing if people are engaging on the posts that we're sharing, what interests them. Also, our media coverage we take a look at weekly as well. Are the things we're regularly sharing information with our media professionals, are they getting covered? Are we in our local, especially our hyper local, so like the Sun Post, Press and News, CCX, those are kind of our hyper local. We want to make sure we're for sure getting captured in those media outlets, but we also take a look at our, is our name out there, in WCCO or other even national outlets. So making sure that we just know what's going on and that people are reaching out if they should be. And then our e-newsletters as well. We want to make sure that those are being read and things are getting clicked on. So seeing again what people are taking a look at content-wise. I would say too, with our switch to S'more e-newsletters, we switched as a district a little bit after our schools did, and I would say we're definitely receiving some more engagement on that. So we'll dive a little bit deeper in our next go round of sharing about C, so you can learn a little bit more about these process measures as well. And then I think I'm turning it over to Jen.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you. The staff stakeholder survey is another data source within this priority. And specifically, we have 4 questions within the environment and communication scale. Not all staff respond to each question. The table shows here who responds to each of the questions asked. And staff will respond by selecting strongly agree or always, or agree or usually. So this scale saw an overall improvement of 5%, going from 75% during the 21-22 school year to 80% selecting often or always. The largest improvement at the survey item level came from staff create space for me to provide feedback regarding my scholar, and staff use my feedback to support my scholar, which showed an improvement of 11% across both survey items.
Jim Max, what's the asterisk one for 2025? This one up at the top. Is 2025
I think it was in the monitoring report. It said the number of respondents.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next slide. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So this slide shows the family stakeholder survey, inclusive communication with community scale. This survey was most recently conducted in the spring of the 22-23 school year. A scientific sample based on district demographics of families with children enrolled in the district was used, and 1,339 families responded. The scale is based on the following 6 questions. And the percentages show the 2 most positive responses, often and always, for each survey item. The scale saw an overall improvement of 5%, going from 75% during the 21-22 school year to 80% selecting often or always in the 23-24 school year. The largest improvements at the survey item level came from staff create space for me to provide feedback regarding my scholar, and staff used my feedback to support my scholar, which showed an improvement of 11% across both survey items. This next graph shows that those same scale percentages segmented by student race and ethnicity groups over the last two survey administrations. And in 2023-24, Asian families had the highest ratings at overall at 84%, followed closely by Black families at 83%. And although not among the top percentages, rates among white families improved the most over time with an 11% increase in positive responses. And this graph shows those scale responses broken out by our student service groups. So students receiving English Learner Services had the highest percentage at 84%, followed by those receiving free or reduced price meals at 81%. Students receiving special ed services had a scale rating of 79%, and the largest improvement over time was among families of students receiving SPED services with a 5% increase. And last but not least, on the family stakeholder survey, this graph shows those same scale percentages broken out by families with students at the elementary or early childhood, elementary, middle school, and high school levels. Families of students in early childhood had the highest percentage at 88%. This was followed by elementary school students at 84%. Families of middle school students had the lowest percentage at 73%. And the question within the scale that brought down the average at the middle school and high school levels the most was school staff have helped my scholars set goals for their future at 42% and 54% respectively. I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Okay, so this concludes what we have to share this evening on Strategic Direction C and those process and outcome measures. We shared with the board last week that we were going to pause and process some of the data because in previous presentations on vision cards it kind of went on and lots of data and not a lot of opportunity for us to pause and process. So those questions were shared with you and they are here in the prompt. Wanted to allow you just a few minutes. There are post-it notes. There should be some by your placard or by your seating area. And if you want to just jot down a few thoughts to the questions that you may have had prior to this meeting. If you don't have notes with you, if you have notes with you, then you're ready to go. But take like 3 minutes here just to jot down a few thoughts that you have for each of the questions there. The first question around alignment. How well do these measures, the metrics that we've shared tonight, reflect the strategies and priorities for Strategic Direction C? Our second area for question is priorities and action. Where are these measures feeling strong in showing progress, and where could they be even better to connect to our goals? And then our last one is this out and up focus to you and to our community. Do these measures clearly communicate our progress out and up to the board and community, or are they still feeling more internal? And what could strengthen this community connection that we seek to have with how we're communicating our progress? So we'll pause here. I'll set the timer on 3 minutes, and then we'll break up into 2 groups of 3 to process. And I think we are situated, Keith, Erica, and Tanya, and then Thomas, Kelsey, and Sarah in terms of our 2 groups of 3 to share out our thoughts. And then we've got chart paper here behind us where we can put our post-it notes when we're done according to the questions. So we have that to bring back to the Vision Card Steering Committee. I'll be quiet now. Four, 3, 2, 1. All right. So which group would like to jump in and get us started with feedback and thoughts?
Go ahead. Oh,
Thank you.
I think we'll all, participate. But, so one of the things that kind of stuck out to us is like it's very clear the communication. It's very well done. We've had great results. I think one distinction we were kind of wondering because of the vision card is like kind of discussing the difference between communication and engagement because it seemed a little lighter on engagement, and along with that, like one of the rubrics were like, for example, the FACE team or like the FACE team rubric, if I'm saying that right.
Yep.
And is so a couple questions is like, is the expectation that team is the engagement team, and if so, I mean, are they have such a lean staff? Like we have a huge district, and I mean, how successful could they really be with, I don't know, 6 people or however people on the team? And so just some clarity around their role. In that, I mean, I think that we've all talked about the boundary process of like it kind of speaks volumes to as it relates to, it's like a perfect example of kind of communication and engagement. Although, it's like one time every like 15 years, and so like how do we kind of take that and like model that on the engagement side? Because I think the communication side is it's clearer, And then I just want to personally add, as a parent, I see the communication all the time for my kids' school, and I always joke like I have 2 middle schoolers. I don't have to know which teacher goes with which of my students, and it's up to me to make sure I'm reading it. It's nothing to do with the district. And I just want to put a plug in. Like I love talking points. I think that's like a great addition because it's just easy. It's like a text, and so I think that.
I think we can give a little bit of light on the school's operational plans, and family and community engagement shows up on their operational plan. Do you all want to talk about like how principals are approaching that?
Sure. So as part of their 3-year operational plans, so in addition to having plans around reading, math, and student behavior, we also have a subset all around family engagement. And so all of the principals have to have steps, whether it's standard learning work rather that they're doing this coming year, implementation work, or the standard work, one of the 3 columns that we use for the 3-year operational plans. Every single school has to have a plan for how they're going to engage families, and they have to have steps in their plan and work the plan and be very, very intentional around that. And we have them use feedback from our family community stakeholder surveys that are sent out to the families. And so that helps inform their plans. But yes, they have to have very strategic, specific steps that they're going to do each year to engage families.
And I would only add, for the elementary as well, I would add too that we encourage them, and many of the leaders do connect with some of the FACE team to really sort of think about how to develop that plan. What are we missing? What should we be considering? And so there's been kind of a nice sort of relationship that has evolved. I'm sure there's more that could be leveraged, but that does definitely show up.
So our hope with the FACE team is that it's helping to teach us how to fish as opposed to doing the fishing for the school, right? That they're teaching them and building that capacity. And that rubric is asking each of the principals to self-assess their school's effort at the engagement piece. And if you look, they're honest. They're not giving themselves high marks. They're saying there's a lot of room for improvement around learning these evidence-based practices that contribute to families coming in and being more engaged. So I think as we go like year over year and we get stronger and stronger at this, we'll see more and more progress in engagement. But this is Kay's team went out to sites.
I was just going to add that.
Go ahead.
Thank you for teaming me up, Brian. Yeah, we went out to sites all last school year to talk about school communication plans, and I know we've been talking a little bit about that in the presentation. So every school now has a school communication plan. So working with a lot of these tools, because we have so many tools to communicate, like what should you use, when should you use it, what should we be using at the classroom level as well. So a lot of them had some sort of thoughts, but we really fine-tuned that. We'll continue to check in with them on how that's going, and a lot of them have that on their operational plans that Kelly mentioned, and probably will be adding more to as we go forward here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I'm just now kind of going off script from our little discussion, but I remember when we established, again, Ryan, like the community engagement piece that had been, like a previous board had talked about it, they didn't do anything, and we came on because wanting to ensure that, engagement was a huge piece of what, our priority. And so I think just knowing that they're a small team and knowing, and I agree, like, the schools need to, that's part of their, the principals and work and stuff, but just making sure, I think we don't want them to feel like, when we say face rubric, it was kind of like, we don't want all of it to be on them, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
right. And so just some more explanation about that, because they are, I work at Hennepin County, and like, it's a huge place, and, it's hard to have like one group kind of be the main people to do all the things, right? And so just making sure, for me, just wanting, I think it's such a great team to make sure they have the support that they need to do that, and to teach that, and to kind of model that engagement is really important.
Yeah. They authored the rubric. Yeah, we have some thoughts about how we might help. Okay, all right. Other feedback?
Well, and I think we all agreed on the standardizing, the communication, the participation with parent review. I was kind of blown away by that. That's 88%.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I don't know if we're already getting to one of the concerns. The lowest, the 42% helping reach goals with students. Was that we were talking about? Was that only at the middle school level?
High school, right?
Middle and high
Middle
school.
and high
Yeah,
school.
middle was 42% and high school was 54%.
Okay. So, yeah, that was just another concern, just looking, if we're going to address that going forward.
So we actually have an advisory program improvement process that we'll be starting to look at our 612 advisory program, and so getting to that very issue. How are we helping them make sure students have goals, but also have plans for what happens after they graduate from high school, college, and career readiness. So that is something we're working on.
All right. Is that okay? All right. Our other group?
So I'd say we would probably echo some of what they said, like the words in C1 and C2, communication, inclusion, engagement, collaboration. And I think some of the measures, it seems really heavy communication versus engagement and inclusion, and the expected outcome being 90% of communication, that feels disjointed to, that's not the expected outcome I have for engagement or inclusion. Like that doesn't, it's measuring C1, but it doesn't feel like it measures the expected outcome for C2. But I think, so we were just kind of talking about like kind of how the different metrics sort of fit or didn't fit, or there was gaps or room in the conversation.
Or even just refining that language in the 2 priorities.
I wondered if maybe there's too much in there even, or like if we need feedback and it's like, well, there's like so much in this, like, do we need to do any refining even possibly so that it's more clear, or like which one needs to change almost?
Yeah, and I love this really small stuff down here. By fall of 2028. So is that eventually kind of make it over into the expected outcome bucket? That's kind of the idea? Okay, so this is just the 2025 focus. These will be the next area of focus and stuff.
Sorry, that was my really small print.
Yeah.
So those were the things, so we haven't developed a community survey yet. So those are some of the things, like if we were to look back at our district-wide communication plan, like some of the goals and objectives that we had in there, some of those things would be getting at whether or not we were achieving what we set out to achieve. So those would be some of the things that we could include potentially as question types on the community survey. We need to work through that a little bit. So that was just something that we wanted to keep top of mind as we work through that.
Yeah, because to me that's the kind of maybe some of the really exciting stuff that's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Is the actual stakeholders' feedback, like just feeling informed and understanding, and
It's kind of like their experience and like the quality of our communication and engagement. I would say overall, like if you look at like the family stakeholder survey, the staff stakeholder, soon to be senior exit survey and community survey, like that will give us that full kind of what is their experience picture, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
One thing I was just thinking, and like I love the senior exit survey, but also I've had a senior who's was completely checked out her senior year and like couldn't care less. And so even like end of junior year, because I think that like my daughter barely wanted to go to school her senior year.
In one of I shouldn't name it, but in my prior district, in order for them to complete their graduation requirements, they had to.
Oh.
That's what our high schools do now
Yeah.
as well. It's part of their cap and gown.
It's a check-off thing for
Yeah.
graduating.
Well, this is fantastic feedback for us to be able to say, okay, we've hit the mark on the communication efforts. Now, how are we doing on the engagement and the experience side of it? So we'll make sure that as we look at those new tools that are coming on, new surveys that are coming on, they're going to give us some outcome measures around that we're making sure that we have engagement represented in those metrics. So thank you for that feedback.
Sorry, I had a couple thoughts on the last two
Oh, okay.
questions. Do you mind? Sorry. For the priorities in action, we were really strong in showing the results. Like, it's very clear there's a lot of data there, which is fabulous. I saw a growth area for why are we seeing these changes in results, especially where there were large jumps. Is there anything we can contribute it to? Like, can we tie it to something so we're understanding what's driving those factors? And then for the out and up front, I said definitely I feel like this is well communicated to the board. The community might struggle to access it and unpack it because they just might not know to look for it. When I wrote it, a note on the back here for myself. And then like even in how this is included, like for me, I'm all about summaries. And so even just adding a tagline of, this was our goal, we achieved it, or this is what we're going to work towards. And I know sometimes that highlights discrepancies between meeting a goal and not meeting a goal. But I think people are always, it's on that transparency. Like, you can't fix something you don't know is broken. And so even just highlighting that, like, hey, we're totally nailing this right now. We're at our baseline. And having it right on that summary.
Yeah.
I love call-outs.
Yeah. Okay.
The up and out, that being kind of new to us through this experience, I do wonder, I think the board has different needs in the community. So, and I think the intention's always been for this to be to the board, how are we doing? So I would say, I just don't know if those are always the same thing. The community might need maybe different measures or different headlines.
A headline, yeah.
Yeah, you could boil it.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
the team can boil it down and make it.
I think the community wants to know, like, are our schools well performing? Are they, like, it's just a different set of information that they're interested in than the board from a governance and oversight perspective.
Okay.
So I just wonder if we can even accomplish both. just a curious wondering in this view.
Because I always think about, like, when I see, like the grids from year to year, right? It's like, oh, we're up and we're a little down, and we're a little up and we're a little, you know what I mean? But like, so are we doing good? You know what I mean? At the end, you're just kind of like, because there's this variability and stuff throughout the years and things. So, and then understanding, right, where we were placing our focus at that time, maybe that's why some of those other things fell and this one kind of gained. And, But yeah.
I did appreciate that you guys broke it out into a smaller thing to look through tonight. Like, that was super helpful to have a more focused approach for tonight. So, thank you.
Absolutely. All right, thank you so much. All right, well, if we want to return to our seats and we'll jump into Strategic Direction D's measures, strategies, priority, expected outcomes. See, and I love this initial framing of, as you all tackled the questions, like, so what do we hit the mark on? What might still be a gap there? As we're listening to the presentation, like what's standing out in terms of the analysis that we just activated? It's awesome.
Me?
Oh, okay.
So as Dr. Bass said, we are going to move on to Strategic Direction D. Under Strategic Direction D, our highest priority work is to refine district department and site operation plans to serve as a tool to monitor the impact of continuous improvement efforts on student achievement. The expected outcome is that 100% of district department and site operational plans have been developed and used for monitoring continuous improvement. Under this work, we have two main strategies. That is our operational plan and our system staff stakeholder survey. Our implementation process measure would be looking at the completion of the 3-year operational plans, and our outcome measure is the staff stakeholder survey. So again, in strategic direction D, we have a high priority, which I just talked about, and then we also have a focus priority, which is the ensure consistent system-wide implementation of evidence-based retention strategies. So those are our priorities. D1, for strategies, we have our enrollment marketing plan, and we also have our operational plans. And for D2, we have our recruitment and retention plans. So for process measures, the Vision Card Steering Committee had lots of conversations around process and outcome measures and how to tease out what's a process measure versus what's an outcome measure. And so we didn't select any outcome measures or process measures, yet. Right? That's sort of the work in process, is teasing out which portions are implementation versus impact. We do have, again, impact measures, our outcome measures. The ones in Indigo are measures we currently have, which are our student stakeholder survey, our family stakeholder survey, the percent of staff of color in our system, and the percent of staff of color retained. And then we have 2 that are in development. Our marketing, I think I messed that up. Our marketing within community relations plan is also is developed, and our percent of operational plans, those should be bolded, Indigo as well. And then our staff stakeholder surveys in development. We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, this is you.
All right, so this is, these are numbers you're seeing for the first time, potentially a little bit. Capture rate is probably something that we've talked about as John goes through the enrollment trends presentation annually. But this, I just wanted to explain this a little bit. So this is, as we mentioned, outcome measures. So really this is helpful in making sure that as a school district, right, we're continually maintaining our students or even increasing our students, right, to be a viable school district from a financial lens, right? That's something we need to do. So we've done some more focused, I would say, marketing efforts, like trying to increase that enrollment over the last, I would say this last school year very heavily, even more so, but have started probably about two or 3 years ago. Pushing that a little bit further. So we're looking at all the data that we have, and we have some more data that we have had even in years past, and we'll continue to try to do that with our community survey, so you can see that's not quite here. Some of the questions that we might ask, just for an example on the community survey, would be like, are you proud of our schools, and would you recommend them to other community members, would be a good question from a marketing lens that we would want to ask. But on the top row here, for data that we have currently, we're talking about enrollment numbers. So you can see kind of the baseline was if we might tease this out because we talked about some different ways we could capture this, but for this year we focused on, are we maintaining or slightly increasing or dipping below 150 students? We are considering ourselves in the progress if we are above 151 to 300, and then envision if we're above 301. So just looking at our November 1 numbers for the last 5 years here, we were at baseline in 2023 and 2024, and then we made some progress in 2025 here. So definitely, and as we talk with schools, because we, as you know, like just one example of a tactic that we've done recently is a school choice fair that's fairly new. As we work with schools a little bit more, we want to ensure that that they're seeing these numbers and the progress being made too from a school lens. So,
can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this enrollment numbers for what grade? Is this K-12?
This is K-12, yes.
Transition?
Yep, K-12. K-12.
K-12.
Yep. Good, very good point. The capture rate, this is something that we've talked a lot about with schools, and I know that we've discussed with the enrollment trends, but the capture rate is the thinking of our attendance boundaries, those that live within our attendance boundaries, and those that have children and attend our schools. So because we have, families can choose charter schools or private schools, so these are the families that live within our boundaries that are choosing us. I've had a lot of conversations with other colleagues throughout the state and nation even. To have a healthy capture rate, you need to be above 70%. We have now, we're all in the red and as intervened based on the scale that we created, because we are below 70%. But you can see we made 0.8%. Am I remembering that correctly? Because my slide used a little slow. We made some gains though last year, and I really think it was because of that strong marketing push that we did this last school year. School Choice Fair, like I said, just one example of many of that. We've really done some tailored efforts with regard to social media as well. And then the student retention rate, that's a new number. So we're taking a look at K-12, like are we from like in cohorts, right? Year 1, year 3, year 5. So what you're seeing here is a year 1, like are we retaining the students that we have enrolled? So based on the scale that we created at this current moment, we again might need to dive into that a little bit more, but for 21-22, we were baseline and then a little bit of a jump in 2023 and 2024, and data is still yet to come for 2025. And I'm going to kick it over to
Katie, do you have a number for the, is kind of like you said, the healthy capture rate being above 70, is it above 80, or what's the healthy?
Yeah, I haven't. I don't know a lot of the districts that do this, so I haven't been able to get as sure of like a healthy number, but I'm researching that a little bit if that's helpful. Yeah, I think we're fairly unique in the fact that we're capturing this, which is great. It's just it's obviously time to dig in and to keep that going. But like I think we're fairly unique in that we have that data set. So, but I will be looking into further like what is that strong number. Yeah.
I mean, every district is so different. Like, I know, like I work with in my real job, I work in the Brooklyn Center, and like they talk about they always get people from other districts. Most of their, you know, so it's it's hard.
So moving on to the operational plans. This is our theory of action. This outlines a results-driven improvement cycle that begins with the development of 3-year plans at the site, department, and district level. The 3-year operational plans are aligned with strategic directions, and each plan sort of details if it's an A, B, C, D, or E. And these plans are where sites, departments, and the district identify the strategies. Progress is monitored routinely with both qualitative and quantitative data to make sure, and it can be done in a variety of ways. It might be at a formal PLT meeting, a data dig, a principal PLT, or in just smaller conversations. Based on this data, adjustments are made to ensure the desired impact is achieved. This continuous process ultimately cultivates a system that promotes operational innovation, excellence, accountability, and sustainability. The strategies in the operational plan fall into 3 different categories: learning work, implementation work, and standard work. Learning work is where we do the research, the testing, the piloting, the learning of, is this going to be a good fit for Osseo area schools? Not everything is a good fit. Those things don't make it into implementation work. When something makes it into implementation work, it's when we start securing resources, creating processes, providing professional learning to those who are involved with implementation. And it's also where we develop those process and outcome measures to ensure successful implementation. And lastly, we have the standard work. And this is established when at least 85 or 80% are applying it effectively based off of the process measures that have been identified. This year, 100% of all of our sites and departments have completed the 3-year operational plan. So we are, that is our baseline year. It's also at vision. So we feel pretty successful with this measure. The student stakeholder survey measures the student perspective on how we are doing at achieving our mission. There are 3 scales or groups of questions from the student stakeholder survey that were used for this priority. So we have Achieve Dreams, Lifelong Learning, and Classroom Learning. Because there were significant revisions to the survey for the spring of 2024, it was treated as a new baseline. New score ranges were developed around this new baseline, and the results for spring 2025 will be added once they are final. We continue to report the percent positive, which is the percentage of students responding yes, always, or mostly less yes to each question. This can also be thought of as the percent agreeing. So our first scale that we'll look at is Achieve Dream scale. The percent positive for each question on each scale in spring 2024 ranges widely, reflecting different aspects of each scale. Students in grades 5 through 12 responded to these questions. Fully 84% agreed that they have dreams for their future, but only 48% indicated that someone at school helped them identify their dreams. Again, this is where we brought in the program improvement process for advisory to ensure that that number starts trending upward.
Do we ask the littles this question?
We only ask 5 through 12.
Oh. Thank you.
Yeah. Lifelong learning. Students in grades 5 through 12 also responded to the lifelong learning scale. Although the percent positive was similar across the 4 questions, students were slightly more likely to indicate that they plan ahead and make good choices, and less likely to say that they ask for help when they can't figure something out on their own. And lastly, the classroom learning scale was for all students taking the student stakeholder survey. So grades 3 through 12 take the student stakeholder survey. 73% of students indicate that their race and culture are important and valued in what they are learning, and 52% said that students avoid getting distracted by cell phones during class. And 70% of students found what they learn in school is useful. This graph shows the scale percentage segmented by student race and ethnicity group. We can see that white students had significantly higher agreement than all other racial groups on lifelong learning. Black and white students had a higher percent positive than Asian students on achieved dreams, and white students reported higher levels of agreement than all other groups except Hispanic on the classroom learning scale. Now Jenna will talk about the family stakeholder survey.
All right. The Family Stakeholder Survey Innovation, Excellence, Accountability, and Sustainability Scale is used as an outcome indicator for this priority. And as mentioned earlier, these results were from the 23-24 school year and represent the responses of 1,339 families. And we had 4 questions in this scale. Families who received the survey could respond to these questions by selecting never, not often, sometimes, often, or always. The percentage reported here is the combination of those 2 most positive responses, so often and always, and it's averaged across all 4 questions there for that overall median of groups. The trend data from the scale show that items within the scale, as well as the overall median of groups, group rates of positive responses have increased. The item, My Scholar is provided with the appropriate technology they need to learn, remains at a higher rate with 94% responding with the 2 most positive responses. And the item with the largest increase in positive responses from the 22 to the 2024 administration was school staff have helped My Scholar set goals for the future with an increase of 11%. So this graph shows that same scale segmented by our student race and ethnicity groups. These data show increases in the rate of positive responses by families of white, Asian, and American Indian students, with an increase of 11% among our white families, 10% increase among our Asian families, and 4% increase among our American Indian families. Positive responses trended downward for our families of Black and Hispanic students by 3 and 6% respectively. Our next chart shows the scale responses broken out by our student service groups. And students receiving English Learner Services had the highest percentage at 91%, followed by those receiving free or reduced price meals at 86%, and then students receiving special ed services had a scale rating of 82%. There was an increase in positive responses among each of these groups from the 2022 administration. And the next chart shows percentages of positive responses among families with students in early childhood, elementary school, middle school, and high school, as we saw previously. And specifically, this chart shows that families of students in early childhood have the highest percentage at 91%. This was followed by elementary school students at 89% and high school students at 79%. Families of middle school students had the lowest percentage at 75%. And the question within the scale that brought down the average at the middle and high school levels was school staff have helped my scholars set goals for their future at 54% and 65% respectively. All grade levels showed improvement in positive responses to the scale over time, with the exception of early childhood.
For the focus work in strategic direction D, ensure consistent system-wide implementation of evidence-based staff retention strategies. The expected outcome is to strive to grow our workforce to be more representative of the scholars and families we serve. There are two primary strategies: individual career paths and cross-functional training. A process measure is the percent of employees receiving stay interviews, and an outcome measure is the percent of staff retained. And here to talk more is Yvonne.
Thank you. Dr. Kine, before I talk through just the trends that we've seen over the last several years, I'd love to just highlight two of these strategies that talk about the two strategies that we're highlighting today. So we know that building a strong, engaged, diverse workforce requires us to be intentional with our recruitment and retention efforts. The two strategies that I'd like to highlight today are individual career paths and cross-functional training. With regard to individual career pathways, we're committed to supporting and developing the development and advancement of underrepresented staff through targeted programs that directly align with our workforce and district needs. One of the ways that we bring this to life is through our career pathways programs, which are supported by grant-funded initiatives, including our Grow Your Own grants. Excuse me. The Grow Your Own programs focus specifically on supporting BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color professionals, and it plays a crucial role in expanding access to license opportunities, especially in special education, which we've, as you all know, we have certainly shortages in that area, and it's a high need area for the district. Through these efforts, like Grow Your Own programs, we're not only building a more representative workforce that reflects our student body, but we're also creating sustainable career trajectories for our employees. And then a second strategy that I wanted to highlight tonight is cross-functional training. So this initiative is designed to provide our staff with training opportunities that are aligned with individual professional goals and broader district goals. By engaging employees in cross-functional learning objectives, we support their development and prepare them for future leadership roles. This approach helps us to identify internal talent, support succession planning, and foster a stronger connection between the day-to-day work and the long-term goals. And we definitely like to think of it as multifaceted. It could include formal training, it could include experiential learning. Ultimately, it's a win-win for the staff and our system. And I wanted to highlight some of the data on the next slide, thank you, which shows you the trend over about the last 12 years. And so I'm going to maybe just speak to the data that's broken down by smaller groups, licensed staff of color, non-licensed staff of color, and administrators of color. And so you can see, our trend has been, we have been trending in the upward area in terms of having our workforce become more and more diverse. It's no secret that there is a national teacher shortage, and that our licensed staff and our licensed staff of color, that's been a slow progress. That being said, when you look at the trend between 2020 and 2025, we've actually made some really nice progress. And so over these last 5 years, we have 19.2% of staff overall that identified as persons of color. And this was up 13.8% from 2020. So again, if you look at all of these groups, you can see that in the above chart, you can see that in 2023 and 2024, we were making more significant progress towards our vision, and in particular, with that overall demographic, more significant progress with our licensed teachers of color. And then in 2025, we are at vision. Again, the work is never done, but we had set a vision or goal for over 18%, and we achieved that goal at 19.2%. And then with that, I know there'll be time for more questions later, but I'll turn it back over to Dr.
staff do we have total?
So
Well, I'm just
benefit
wondering,
eligible, I
maybe
would say
percent of
about 2,500, total about 4,500, because we have a really large temp casual workforce.
what? Say that again.
So basically, full-time is 2,500, total workforce is about 4,500.
So again, just a slice of some of the data that we're going to be populating for this vision card as well. And so we're at the point where we want to pause. I think you get the essence of what we're trying to do in terms of this strategy snapshot of seeing an expected outcome, a goal. What are the strategies? Yvonne, thank you for that narrative on those two strategies of individual career path and cross-functional training. Those aren't terms that we necessarily hear frequently at board work sessions, so thank you for that additional background on those pieces. And then we looked at those measures to show how we're doing and the progress that we're making. So as you'll see, some of these, it'd be great to have your feedback on when we hit it at vision, how aggressively then do we get to reset to a new baseline that we then aspire to an even greater goal. So that's something that will also, when we start to hit those measures of vision, where do we set it after that? So we'll pause here and give you again some individual time to reflect on now strategic direction D and the information and data that we've shared in the context of those three questions. And then we'll break up into those groups again and give you time to discuss and provide us with some feedback. I recognize that we could have had more time, but we certainly, even the feedback that you gave us was phenomenal for the amount of time that we are setting aside. So we'll set the timer for 3 to 4 minutes here for the independent time, and then we'll meet in groups. And that was more like 12 minutes last time, so we'll stay with 12 minutes. We're ahead of schedule too, so this is great. Okay. All right, we could again stay where we're at, and if we want to start with this side first, since they started first last time.
Yeah, I mean, we had like a lot of different thoughts and reactions. I don't know if we have like one group thought out.
Okay.
So I think like to me, the way that I read this one was how do we know we're excellent? So I was struggling with the system of operational innovation, excellence, accountability, sustainability. It didn't feel like these were like operational, continuous improvement type of things. So what I said back is that, okay, it seems like this is saying, how do we know that we're excellent from a staff perspective, a community perspective, and a student perspective. So I really like the student measures as far as if we're excellent, we're achieving the mission. So that made sense to me that those were the measures, and that's what defines that we're excellent in the district. Enrollment data was really good. I think we didn't understand the marketing with community, the data source versus marketing within community relations, but we didn't know what that meant, but the enrollment data is meaningful and well aligned to our District of Excellence. I think we said that the operational plans completion doesn't necessarily give us indication of quality or kind of, okay, so it's completed, but what does that mean? Recruitment, we're good measures for kind of a staff perception if we're an excellent school district, and good recruitment and retention numbers. So this one felt well aligned for me from that perspective, but it also is kind of a lot of different measures too, which can be, I don't know, Keith, did you want to elaborate on from that perspective? Or
well, I mean, I like this. I love this view, right? Because I can see. So the intent is to get the D like the C.
Yes.
Okay. Because I mean, then I can kind of like draw, conclusions between how these kind of continue to roll up into each other, right? And the relationships there. When we still got the list, it's hard, right? It's hard to kind of. it's a long list, and it's, yeah, how they interrelate and how they, you know, affect each other and things like that is kind of lost, right, with this. So I love that we're kind of going in this direction for sure, the way we're seeing, yeah.
Yeah, we slowed down and we said, okay, so operational innovation, how do we measure that? Operational excellence, how are we measuring that, right? And so we look at the operational plan as a structure that helps us progress monitor, right? And how are we using that as to cycle through a continuous improvement cycle around the major strategies that are outlined in our operational plans, right? So it's an implementation measure, right? But again, what are the actions that we want adults doing with their operational plan that is continuous improvement work and monitoring the strategies that they're implementing, right? So when we looked at that theory of action, it was, so it's not just they have a plan, it's that they're actually tracking their progress and implementation and that it's having the desired impact. And if they do that, then we are cultivating, right, operational innovation and excellence. And with learning work is that space for innovation. So as Dr. Kind read that description, that's where we research and pilot new practices emerging in the field, and we're trying to see whether or not those things work in our system, and if they don't, we don't implement them. If they do, then we choose to implement them and take them to standard work and strategically invest in them and apply resources to them. So, but we hadn't thought about this or had this dialogue or this conversation about how are we defining operational innovation? How are we defining operational excellence? And our consultant was like, well, what's your theory of action? What's your logic model say? And so we're like, what? We get to know how to make a theory of action? Okay, great. So then we identified these moves would help us know that we have continuous improvement cycles. And so our survey for staff will ask them about their experience participating in continuous improvement efforts specific to this theory of action. So I think we're going to get closer to having some metrics, some outcome metrics that have our staff report on what their experience is with so we'll have a new scale that'll be continuous improvement and a new scale that'll be innovation. And they'll talk about their experiences with that. But that, yeah, that's definitely a gap.
It's like in the process box.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
It's helpful to hear your thought process too. Thank you.
He'll share with you anytime.
I have a connect with him at 1:30 on Tuesdays, so.
If you have a portable whiteboard, that'll be great.
Oh,
too.
yeah, good call.
All right.
I just have a question on the marketing within community relations. The number, it says 85% recommend our schools. Is there a vision number?
That was just an example of, we would have to do some more research, but that was an example of a question that we might put on the community survey.
So that's not.
So it's not,
we
it's
don't
not
have
us,
a
that's
number.
and we don't
Okay,
have
that's what I
any
was curious
data
about.
on that right now, so, but that's like a question, like from a marketing standpoint, we would include on the community survey,
Okay.
like how many people, basically would recommend our school, are proud of our schools and would recommend them to others in the community, yeah.
I was at Cub and Maple Grove and I saw our, like, they have like an out, like the monitor
Yep.
when you check out. I was like, yeah.
You gotta go to the grocery store,
Yeah,
right?
you gotta go. A little screen, so it was cool.
That's good to hear.
We had a few questions or comments, maybe Thomas can add to on the
Your
achieving dreams
Kowalski's
and
is
goals.
probably-
Just some of the language, you know, obviously that with the lower numbers there, that's something you're talking about working on, but just the difference of what, we kind of in a previous work session, we were talking about the difference of, you know, a goal versus a dream and how are we defining that for, you know, our students and staff. I don't know if you want to turn on kind of the questions too, the questions.
Yeah, just overall, I felt like there was a disconnect between the questions that we're measuring and those three goals of achieve dreams, classroom learning, and lifelong learning. It seemed like those are questions that we've been asking for quite a while, and we tried to sort of force those into like those three goals. Quick example is the cell phone question. I feel like there are probably a number of more meaningful questions that we could be asking about classroom learning than cell phone use. So that was like one that like really stuck out to me, but in general, I just felt like the questions weren't quite hitting at the goal. So yeah, that was, anything else?
So let me make sure I capture that. So as we look at those items in Achieve Dreams, Lifelong Learning, the items didn't necessarily feel like they closely aligned to what this, to that category?
Were those questions created with the intent of aligning to those?
Okay.
Because that's, I'm not feeling like they were created for that purpose.
Okay.
Created many years ago.
Maybe those questions have been around for a while.
It's one of the things we talked about with these questions is like, you know, what do we do with this? You know, like for example, when we look at, it's kind of been consistent with students, you know, identifying their dreams or goals or setting goals, and it's lower. And does that mean like, you know, you look at programs like Avid or other, you know, like do we need to implement that? Because I know, like we were even talking, like I know my middle school, you know, she got her application in like for Avid. I think it would be great for her. I wish like everyone had, but like every student had an opportunity for that. So like that's kind of what we were talking about too, like how are we using this to actually like maybe implement something else.
Yeah, so that advisory program improvement process with the bringing in Avid to all of our secondary sites, that's one of the things, you know, not every student gets to be part of that Avid elective. So how do we bring more of those elements to all students through advisory, and so that it's at all of our sites in a consistent manner?
Okay, so my last question about the data, I was just curious of, I mean, my slides are so messed up, but you know, the demographic one, like one of them didn't have like a 2020. I'm embarrassed to say. Okay, 87, yeah, it just didn't have the 2020.
Page 87?
87, yeah. It's at 81% multi, I'm assuming multi.
And we disaggregate.
Oh.
I just was curious of like the 2021 number.
Multiracial, are you talking about the multiracial one?
Yeah, there was, we adopted a new system, and we didn't realize until after the survey had been distributed that our Synergy system wasn't connected correctly to our new tool. And so they are represented in there, but they would be represented in different student groups, such as our Black and African American students, or other students that, other student groups, I guess.
So that was the dispersed amongst.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you wanted just to clarify there? You didn't?
Oh, I was just wondering why. I just was curious. I just didn't know.
Okay. I just want to make sure if there was a.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
fixed now.
The percent staff of color. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we talked about like, I mean, I guess I like, I think it's a hard thing to look at because, okay, so we understand like there's the complexities and like the barriers and, you know, with the, I just don't know, like we were just talking about the 19% to be at vision. I'm not sure that's a great, when we talk about excellence, to me that's not, like, I would like to really revisit that and have that conversation because even when you look at the breakdown of numbers, it's like, you know, licensed percent of colors at 15%, non-licensed 50%. I mean, it's hard to kind of like pull apart, and so I was like, is that really reflective of the experience of our families and scholars? And I know I always use my own example just because I have a gajillion kids, but like, you know, like my oldest daughter didn't have her first teacher of color till middle school, and that was it. That was all she ever had. My second daughter is probably going to be the same thing for her, you know, like, and same with my younger kids. So I'm just curious of like, I do think as a board we should talk about this one a little bit more. And again, like, I mean, with some of the state mandates coming down and the license, I mean, I understand it's very complicated. Every district is struggling. But to say we've reached vision, I don't know.
And I think, again, well, Dr. Bass will speak to it, but that was the 2025 goal that was set. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that the work is done, right? But that goal was set, I don't know how long ago, the over 18% goal. Before my time. But I mean, we set goals, and seeing that the growth was, has at least sped up is, I think is encouraging, but certainly doesn't mean that we're done.
Yeah, and I again, like we all talk, we understand that there's not of a lack of effort, but I just, did you want to say something else?
No, I mean, I think you hit it. Just that 19% is heavily weighted by the ESP percentage. And so, yeah, I don't know how we measure it or how we continue to like set goals, but I don't feel comfortable saying we're at vision without sort of additional context.
Okay.
My last question I just had, because I'm curious, I just don't know. What, what's an example? Oh. Can you give me an example of the cross-functional training is? Like, what would that be? Like, just curious.
Well, we're talking about it even, within our own department, so it's gonna vary by department and by group. So some of it is creating redundancies so that people can back each other up. Some of it is teaching people higher level skills so that they have the ability to grow in their current role and then hopefully grow and be able to develop into not just leadership roles, but we have a really large array of classifications, and so there are high-level individual contributor roles in the district as well. So you can think about it along classifications, you can think of it as leadership verticals, you can think of it even like within the context of our Grow Your Own programs, where we're trying to provide opportunities for non-licensed staff like ESPs to have those pathways into licensed staffing. So it is, I don't know, those are examples.
I mean, it sounds good. I mean, it sounds on paper, I was like, well,
No, I appreciate the question.
Any other thoughts here before we wrap up? We're our last slide. So our next steps, obviously we're going to engage in the same work for the strategic directions A, B, and E. We'll be back in June to share our progress with the same system strategy snapshot process. So we'll be working on those pieces and then identifying the remaining major strategies. So next year when we bring C and D, there'll be even more strategies that we'll make visible across the columns there. And then the last one is we're going to absolutely integrate your feedback from tonight in A, B, and E. So yeah, that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is really good.
If you're comfortable sharing your sticky notes, if you want to just toss them up there, we'll. If not, it's fine. I was a social studies teacher in 9th grade. I'm pretty good at decoding handwriting.
You know, the power of AI to take the picture and then decipher it out is actually pretty incredible.
We did a whiteboard, and I wasn't sure that it could do that.
I don't know if anybody had a chance with the podcast, if that was helpful or not, to get the synthesized version of the monitoring report.
So I like the podcast, but I am I'm like the kind of person I read a book. I prefer a book and I'm underlining it. So the next time I listen to the podcast, because I was listening while I was walking, I'd probably have my report and listen and do both. For me personally.
Okay.
But it was good. It was part one only though, right?
Yeah. Through strategic direction C.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think some of us were confused, like, is it C and D, so where's part two?
Sure. All right. The school board will be going into a closed session for the purpose of conducting the superintendent's annual performance review. This work session is adjourned at 8:28 p.m.